Well, hello again and welcome back to another video, and I hope some of you that do boat are getting back into boating again now as things start to ease and things slightly start getting a little more back to normal. And for those of you that just come and watch my videos, well, hello and welcome back to everybody. I still haven't done any work on my boat since the lockdown and since all this problem began, so I thought I'd do another little video anyway today, carrying on my series about buying a lesser or cheaper, if you like, GRP boat for the Canal or the river. This is obviously UK based where I am, and obviously more I know, but and what I thought I would do was, I had intended to go and look at some brokerage boats this spring and do little videos about those in my local area here, but of course that it was impossible to do that. All the marinas were shut and you couldn't do that. So what I thought I'd do to start with, I hope perhaps to carry on that onwards, later on in the year again, or even into next year. What I thought I'd do a little video, and as I say, this might run into a little series even, of my favourite second-hand boats, and just sort of tell you what I like and what I think's out there, estimate the price, and makes that you might like to have a look at or go and look at if you're looking for a boat. It's always good to get other people's opinions of what people think and what people buy and what's out there. So in this first video, the boat firm that I'm going to look at is John Freeman Marine, who built Freeman Cruisers, a firm I know very well, having had a number of Freeman boats over the years. Just a little bit of a very brief history. I want to keep these videos moving along, not too long, and I don't want to get rambling off on tangents as I can so easily do. But John Freeman Marine, John Freeman started out building very high-class caravans before and after the Second World War. He started developing glass fibre works, if you like, in the 1950s by making caravan sinks and moulding that, and he even moulded a whole glass fibre caravan in the 1950s. He could see great potential with this new material, and in 1957 he developed a moulded boat in glass fibre. And so that's a brief history. I think they were, if not the second firm in the UK to build a production glass fibre boat, to say 1957. They built it over a total. The years they ran was from 1957 to 1983, so they've been shut down for many years now, so it's all credit to them that their boats have lasted so long. And they built 28 models over that period of time. We haven't got time. I could sit here all day and bore you to tears going all through the model ranges. So I picked 3 Freeman boats that I'm going to have a sort of quick look at. This video will be interspaced with pictures of these boats, obviously, so you know what I'm talking about, know what to look for if you want to go and have a look at some of these particular models. So the very first model that I'm going to look at was the very first production boat that John Freeman made, which dates from 1957, and this was known as the Freeman Mark I. It was a Freeman 22 Mark I. The reason it was 22 because it was 22 foot long. So in my view, a very attractive little boat. As I say, I have the original Freeman brochure of that era, which I'll put up, and also some pictures of some Mark I Freeman, so you can see. As I say, so this boat is 22 foot long in length. It's 7'6" beam, that's the width across. So obviously the early Mark I Freemans won't fit the narrow locks on some of the narrow canals in the UK. It would fit like the bigger locks on, say, the Grand Union main line and those locks, but it won't fit when you come to a section where you've got very narrow 7-foot locks. The early Freeman Mark I is too wide. Primarily, it was designed as a light coastal boat, a day coastal boat, and a river boat, and that's, I think, what John Freeman designed it in mind. But Freeman Mark ones have found themselves everywhere, and I know there are a number on the canals. So Freeman was renowned for one of their really key, fundamentals, if you like, was their interior woodwork. They obviously really specialised. John Freeman bought all his own trees and stored it on their factory site and let it dry out naturally, and then he had the veneers rolled onto plywood himself, and all the veneers on Freeman boats, all the wood matches, they gave it a high gloss. Most of it had a high gloss varnish finish to it, and the woodwork was outstanding, or can still be outstanding if you find a good example, or you go about refinishing the woodwork on the boats. So that was one. Some people, it might look a little bit dated to some people because it's quite dark, some of the wood, and I suppose I've heard it say naturally because it's where they come from, but it looks a bit like a vintage caravan, which it does. But then again, John Freeman obviously started in manufacturing caravans, so hence that reason. So as I say, the Mark 1 in its early form was made from 1957 to 1963. There are many, don't be put off by the age, there are many boats out there still, even that old, still on our rivers and waterways. Mark 1s seem to have survived so well, as all of John Freeman boats have. So price wise now, I've seen a Mark 122 Freeman as low as 1,800 if it needs a lot of work doing, if it needs, I'm not going to say total renovation, but a lot of work and money spending on it. I've seen them, under £2,000. But I would say the price guide is somewhere between £2,000 and £6,000 tops for a Mark 1 Freeman of that era, from say, 57 to the sort of mid 60s, shall we say. I don't think you'd be wanting to pay a lot more than £6,000 unless perhaps it had had a huge amount of work done on it and maybe had a new diesel engine fitted. Because all the Freeman range of boats had inboard engines. The Mark 1 originally, I think the 1957 original Mark 1s had a BMC, British Motor Company, Vidette petrol engine installed in them. Then you also used a lot of the 100E Ford Marinised engines and the 105E Ford Marinised engines, which were done by a company called Water Motor of Newton Abbot. They actually took, a basic small, what was a car petrol engine, and marinised it to use on a boat, and put what was called a Water Motor J-type gearbox on the engine, which was just basically a forward for going forward. You pulled the lever back, it went into neutral, and you pulled the lever right back for reverse. A very simple gearbox on the engine. So vast majority of them you might find, as I say, over the years people have taken engines out and replaced them with diesel engines. I think there were a very, very few Mark 1s built with Perkins diesel engines, but it has to be remembered, back in the 60s, diesel engines were very big, very heavy, unlike the more modern lightweight diesels we're used to now. So obviously they took a huge amount of room and weight up on a small 22-foot boat. I think that was much the problem, whereas a small light compact petrol unit obviously fitted much more easily and gave you that power for less weight ratio sort of and room size. A great little boat in my estimation, the Freeman Mark 1. There's plenty of them about. We've covered the price, which is, as I say, between 2,000 and 6,000. You might go a little bit over that if you found something really absolutely outstanding. That would obviously be up to yourself, but I wouldn't want to spend any more than sort of 6,000 on the Freeman Mark 1 now. One has to be careful if you're doing a lot of work to it, and by that I mean thinking about re-engineing a boat, because you can soon spend what the boat is worth, the selling value, on just buying a new engine alone, even before you think about fitting it and all the other ancillary works that go along with that. So you have to be really careful, and I think that's why many have survived with their original engines for so long. Plenty of spares about. That's not a problem, even for the older engines. Plenty of there's even a company that remanufactures certain Freeman parts, so getting parts for the engine isn't too big a problem. So don't be put off by that because you're thinking you're buying something 50, 60 years old. Will I be able to get so and so? There's a chance, yes, you can. So that's a little Mark 1. I think it's a lovely little starter boat. It was a quality built boat in its day. It sold in good numbers. What they did in 1963, they actually finished the Mark 1 as a 7'6" beam, 7'6" wide, and they actually cut the mould down and made it into a Canal version. So it then became just under 7 foot, so it would cut, go through the narrow locks on the UK canals. But one has to be very careful, and that the Canal version of the Freeman Mark 1 was made between 1963 and approximately 1967 or 66 or 67 or thereabouts. But there is no defining difference from looks from the wider Mark 1 to the narrow beam Mark 1. So if you are specifically looking for a narrow beam Mark 1, you want to get the vendor or the seller to measure and make sure that it actually is under that 7 foot beam. Get a tape measure across the widest part of the boat and measure it physically, because there is no other way of telling that is either a wider beam or a narrow beam Mark 1, as I say. So that is quite tricky, and I've seen adverts for Mark 1 Freemans saying they're all narrow beam. They're not. They're not. They all, the first, say from 1957 to 1963, they were built as a 7'6" beam boat. So that's never going to fit through a narrow canal lock if you intend to use this. Even if you wanted to occasionally take it on a canal or go through a canal, which has got really narrow locks, it ain't going to fit, as they say. So be careful of that. And as I say, if you have it surveyed or somebody goes and looks at the boat for you, do have it measured across and just see what it is, whether it's the wider beam version or the narrow beam version, and make sure that's clear before you go on and buy it. So that's the Mark 1. One other quick point you might be interested in is several 60s and 70s celebrities owned Freemans, particularly the 22 Mark 1, which we talked about earlier. Ernie Wise of Ernie and Eric Morecambe fame. Ernie Wise loved boating, and he started his boating life with a Freeman Mark 1 22. So you're in good company, I often think. If you remember, any of you that's a bit older out there and used to watch the programme Minder with Arthur Daly, George Cole, who played Arthur Daly. Well, do you remember Glyn Edwards, who played Dave behind the bar in the Winchester Club? Well, Glyn Edwards, as I say, he was a very keen boater, and he had a number of Freeman Mark 1s and Mark 2 22s in the 60s and 70s, because he was a very fanatical boater, was Glyn Edwards, who was Dave from Minder, and a bit of an icon there again. If you're in your younger years, you won't know this person, but a famous so-called celebrity kind of actress of the 50s, 60s and on into 70s was Diana Dawes in the UK, and she loved boating, apparently, and had a Freeman 22 Mark 1 on the River Thames, which I think was called Double Top. And I won't say any more about that. Enough said. But so yes, you're in good company there, and so there we go. I've rambled on quite enough for one day. So thanks for watching. As always, please subscribe. Please comment. Do you like Freemans? Is there any other of us out there that still think they're a wonderful little boat? Anyway, with that, I will see you in a future video. And for now, I'll say goodbye.